Everybody's attention real quick. If I could have your attention, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're already running behind, and we've got other committees meeting, and I don't want to lose my members or my space here. So before we get started, I'm going to ask number 9.
Number 9.
All right.
Okay,
You say a prayer for us,
yes,
Senator?
sir. If you bow your heads. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for freedom and liberty, and Father, for the blessings that you've given us. We ask that you give us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, and as we deal with the legislation and for the people of Georgia, bless it and give us wisdom in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Senator. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm going to go ahead and ask the author, if he will, to come on down front, and appreciate him working on this. Can't thank Chairman Burns enough. I know this legislation has been worked on a lot over the weekend and even some this morning. So we've got a good piece of legislation here that I know he's done a lot of work with. It's a good common sense bill with some checks and balances, and just excited to hear him present the bill. And I'll turn the floor over to him because I know he's actually got another committee to get to as well. So floor is yours.
We'll be succinct as we work through this legislation. This is Senate Bill 214. We're working off of LC 473679S. If you recall, the original bill dealt with absentee ballots on request. So a person could come to the voting location during early voting, and if they chose to not use the ballot marking devices, they could have asked for a paper ballot in the form of an absentee ballot. What this bill now does is it codifies the use of a paper ballot voting system. If you will notice in your handout, there's a map. There's a map of the United States. And in that map, this is from Verified Voting, nonprofit in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. If you'll notice on this map, it's mostly green. Green are states that use hand-marked paper ballots. What this legislation does, it does 3 things, and I'll go through the bill quickly in a moment, but I'm going to tell you what it does. Number 1, it requires that all votes are cast on a hand-marked paper ballot, and that paper ballot is then optically scanned and tabulated. So the elector actually marks the ballot by hand. They can see who they chose in each race. They would then submit it to an optical scanning device, which tabulates the votes and at the same time provides an image of the ballot, and then the ballot is secured. In order to achieve that, we have to go back upstream a bit to allow for the correct image of the ballot image to be given to the elector. So the legislation requires that you have a print on demand ballot, a ballot printing on demand. So I come in as an elector, I provide my credentials, I'm accepted for that, then I am given the exact ballot that is necessary for my individual decision making. So some precincts have a single ballot image. Some precincts have multiple ballot images. So that's why we need those things. The best thing about this is all ballots would be print-on-demand ballots. The elector would take that ballot, go to a secure area, make their choices physically with pen and ink. It would then be scanned, optically scanned, and tabulated. We'd use the exact same technology that we have for decades when it comes to tabulating voter preferences. So if you look with me quickly at the bill, Section 1, lines 13 and 14, it defines ballot on demand printing. So it's a standalone system that prints ballots for each ballot style within a given county or municipality. If you look on, I'm going to just highlight a couple of things. Section 2, line 27, it strikes on line 26, it strikes scanning ballots marked by electronic ballot markers and substitutes an optical scanning voting system utilizing non-electronic ballot markers, meaning hand-marked ballots, and ballot on-demand printing. So that defines what we're trying to do. If you'll notice, we have to clarify multiple times, you'll see the term optical scanning voting system and ballot on demand printing. You'll see that on 34, 38, 41. I want to stop a minute at line 44. The Secretary of State is authorized to conduct pilot programs as we begin to implement this system. So he's authorized to provide pilot programs in this area of optical scanning voting systems, ballot on demand printing, line 46. Let me pull back up. Make sure I'm on the right side. Sure, I'm on the right LC. There we go. You look at, we took off a section which dealt with the ability for jurisdictions to conduct paper ballot elections, because now they'll all be paper ballots. So if you look at line 69 through 83, you'll see that area has been struck and it's no longer necessary. And then looking at lines 115, we make sure that each polling place in the state will utilize optical scanning voting systems. So we're going to be consistent and standardized across the state. We're currently consistent, but we're consistent with BMDs, which we want to now become consistent with paper, hand voted, hand articulated paper ballots. There is a need in section 6 to ensure that we have the ability to accommodate those who have impairments. So there will be an electronic option there. And then the remainder of the bill basically is changing terminology to optical scanning voting system with ballot on demand printing. And I'm happy to take questions.
All right, good job, Mr. Chairman. We got a few questions here, so we'll go ahead and get started. Number 9.
Yes, sir. Mr. Senator Burns, you're going to make a lot of people happy who have been wanting paper ballots. So for that, we thank you for having a lot of happiness going on. Am I correct that when they scan the hand ballot into the machine, into the digital machine scanner, they will be able to see their ballot and what went in right then and there?
They will be able to see their ballot. They will physically, optically scan that ballot. If it's spoiled or if there's a stray mark, they would immediately correct it and review their voting preferences and make sure that before they leave the polling place that their ballot was correctly recorded.
Question. I know questions, there'll be no QR codes, correct?
There are no QR codes on this ballot.
And paper, it will be any kind of security paper.
It'll be the standard security paper that we use now for our current voting systems. So we would utilize a secure paper, but you got to realize this paper is printed on demand. So you will only print the ballot when the elector presents their credentials and are confirmed, and then their ballot will be provided for them.
Will the scanner, just as a follow-up, I know, have any detection of the paper itself? I know with the other systems that had been there, they were using a special paper, but the technology was not turned on the scanners. Is this going to have anything there?
I think we can certainly look at that. I don't think that this bill directly addresses the verification, but you have to remember that the ballot on demand printing system would only print a ballot for a specific elector for that election cycle. So there are no stray ballots out there.
Okay.
There are no pre-printed ballots except for emergency ballot uses.
Excellent, Bill. Very good. Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Number 4. Number 4 down here. Jace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you answered my first question, Senator, but right now we currently allow for there to be hand-marked paper ballots in certain elections, and we have optical scanners.
That's correct.
Why not? Why is this mandate necessary when we already have a current system? Why not just expand that?
Well, that's exactly essentially what we've done. So currently, the technology that we use to tabulate, to scan, will accept a hand-marked ballot and will tabulate it accurately, and will also provide an image of it. So what you're seeing here is, instead of using the electronic system, the ballot marking device, the BMD, you are providing the elector with their ballot when they appear at the polling place, and then physically mark the ballot, where now they mark it via an electronic image or electronic screen that prints it out with a QR code, which this has no QR code. It's straightforward. It is an extension of the original SB 214, which was an absentee ballot. This is now the ballot. It is just the ballot that every elector would use.
So how does this jive with the requirement for the QR code, which the Secretary of State has said will cost the state $70 million? And ultimately, counties want to make sure that we have a standard, that it's consistent, that we're not spending money. And I want to ask you about the fiscal impact on this in a second. But how does this jive with the fact that we already have a requirement in the books that needs to be met by next year with what you're requiring? With what you would have in this bill?
I would say that the Secretary of State has made a financial request to the Appropriations Committee, and the Appropriations Committee may or may not fund that request. I would suggest that this is an alternative to that funding request, and recognize that your fiscal note question is an excellent question. I've asked that. We're trying to understand the cost of really the only additional hardware that would be required would be ballot on demand printing. I've heard estimates from as low as $1,000 to upwards of $7,000 per unit. We would have to have a ballot on demand printer in every precinct. In some precincts, we'd have to have multiple. I think some of our friends who operate our elections across the state can speak to that. We realize that there will be some investment, but we believe it will be a fraction of the cost of upgrading the current system to not use QR codes. This is a non-QR code based approach. It is a hand-marked paper ballot, period. And I would suggest that the tabulation component is an optical scan, but it gives us the physical document to be able to verify the election and an image scan document to verify the election. So we really have three ways to verify every election, and the elector can visually see their choice. And I'd like to point out, Mr. Chairman, if I could, this is not a Democratic bill. It's not a Republican bill. It's a Georgia bill. And the objective here is to provide the confidence in Georgia voters that their votes were accurately recorded and counted.
And the last question for now is most of these states that you identified in this map, and I appreciate you providing us with this, use prepackaged ballots.
True.
Why not give counties the option to be more cost efficient?
We do
by
that.
using-
We do that on election day, so that the local election officials can choose to either reprint the ballots for precincts, especially if the precinct only has a single image. It makes it pretty straightforward. But during early voting, there are fewer precincts, and almost every precinct in early voting has multiple ballot styles, multiple ballot images. So we do in this legislation allow the local election officials to utilize the print on demand on election day, or if they choose, they can do pre-printed ballots. I would say we probably need to negotiate a little bit more and clarify that a bit. I have a strong preference for print on demand.
Where's the option?
Well, it may not be here now, but we discussed it. Let's look. As you may imagine, this was negotiated over the weekend and into the Monday. What line number? 140. Thank you. Shall either be prepared sufficiently in advance of the superintendent or shall be delivered. Now that's for absentees. That's for absentees. happy to look at that, Senator. I think standardization is a positive. My understanding is print on demand, ballot printing on demand is used across our country. If you recall, we had testimony in our last meeting when we first did a hearing on 214, and we referenced the Virginia system, the Virginia approach toward election administration. This bill is essentially the Virginia approach to election administration, the use of a paper ballot with an optical scan with a ballot print on demand so that you could get an accurate ballot for the elector that they could then hand mark and then physically scan into an optical reader for tabulation.
And then last question, I'll let
Sure.
my colleagues. Where does it mandate hand marked paper ballots?
If you look at line 27, an optical scanning voting system utilizing non-electronic ballot markers. That is a non-electronic ballot marker.
But so can a machine that you press that where the ink
We've
goes
had
onto
this
the ballot.
discussion, and I recall substituting the word hand marked. But my assurance from Ledge Council was that this achieves the objective. Okay. So this is a non-electronic ballot marker. Now it's got to be, I think it has to be blue or black. Okay. I think it has to be scannable. Okay. But the elector physically marks the ballot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know enough about this process to answer to know the answer to this question. That's what I'm going to ask you. So my understanding now, when I go to the ballot box, I mark my thing, and then it actually prints out something that has QR code. You talked about the expense to it. What's wrong with those printers? Why can't those printers be used to produce the ballot for us on the front end instead of having to buy brand new printers?
Well, currently the main systems will allow that, but the upgrade costs are quite substantial. It would have to produce what's referred to as a full face ballot. Other systems provide the technology to partner or pair with the voter verification system, the NOAC systems that we use now, to then feed to a printer that prints the ballot image specifically to that elector. I think what we'll see is that as we delve deeper into this discussion, the cost associated with this approach will be significantly less than the alternatives.
Right.
Now, we still have the printing cost of paper.
Sure.
And we understand that. And we can discuss whether or not we should allow the local election officials to have pre-printed documents or all of it be print on demand. My preference is print on demand, but we can have that conversation.
Right. But so you're saying that the current printers that we all have all throughout the county are not compatible with this new process that you're trying to
The
implement?
current printers that are connected to the current BMD system, the Dominion BMD system, are not compatible with this approach. That's my understanding.
Okay. And then the other piece of this, I think people want to know how they want to know that who they voted for is tabulated correctly. Not that they voted. I mean, they want to know that too, but I think fundamentally people want to know that if they check Abraham Lincoln, that the machine got that they checked Abraham Lincoln. So talk to me through how does what you're talking about here actually verify that for me as the voter?
They physically see their selections on the ballot. They physically
Right.
see their selections on the ballot.
Sure.
There's no QR code.
But when it goes in the
It goes
machine,
to the tabulator, to the optical scanner,
Mhm.
they would then rely on both an image that's available to verify a post-election verification from the images, and you could do a hand count of the paper ballot. Now, the elector themselves, when they submit the ballot, would not be able to physically see the tabulated components.
right. So that's I think that's the rub here. So I think that many people in this room are concerned about making sure that when they voted for Abraham Lincoln, that machine, when it goes in, that machine counted that they voted for Abraham Lincoln, not that they put a ballot in the box. That's
All right, I
you know, so I'm just wondering, like, how are we actually fixing fundamentally some of the concerns that people have here?
I hear your concern and I appreciate it. But at the end of the day, optical scanning has been around for an extended amount of time. I mean, 50 years, 70 years. And we run the exact same verification test. We do it now. We use optical scanning in our current scan.
Correct.
And we do verification testing and we do post-election audits to ensure that the confidence is there. But if I displayed that tabulation on a screen, I'm not sure that would add to the voters' confidence that says the machine tabulated, because they would perhaps suggest that it was somehow modified or changed. I think one of the reasons to consider this approach, you can't hack a paper ballot. You can't alter a paper ballot. At the end of the day, you have the physical document. You have the physical vote that was cast by the elector, and you can verify.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate it. I will just say I'm not opposed to hand marked ballots. I'm not opposed to those at all. I'm just trying to make sure that if we go through this major change, that we're actually addressing what's at the heart of the matter, which is that people want to make sure that Abraham Lincoln was counted, less that, ballot number 1, ballot number 2, we don't care if 50 ballots were cast. We want to know, did Abraham Lincoln get 50 votes or did,
Protect your privacy.
right,
I cannot link your ballot to an elector.
right.
We've had the discussion at this committee about serialization of ballots. And we've always rejected that approach. We're looking at other alternatives to it, but we've always rejected that approach because we want to protect the overall
Right.
privacy and confidence of the elector. So I don't need to know, or should I know, how you would vote. And that would be true. You should not need to know or should know how I might vote. So in order to protect the confidence, I can't directly say elector 34 voted this way.
Sure. No, I understand. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator from the second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to ask some common sense question. I'm just trying to get a little clarity on, Senator. Line 31, when you took out, line 30 and 31, you took out electronic ballot markers and then you put in system. And you say system shall produce paper ballots which are marked with the elector's choices in a format readable by the elector. So, Senator, is it your position that these new printers will be able to print in Braille?
That's a very interesting point. You realize that certain with disabilities, certain people who need special accommodations, we would have a separate alternative voting method for them. They would not use the paper ballot. They would use perhaps a BMD or perhaps a DRE. DRE is a direct recording of elections. So there will be a need to comply with federal law. We already have it today. It's to accommodate people with special needs. Those who have hearing impaired, those who are visually impaired, those who have other concerns. I want you to know that's federal law and we comply with it now. Now, interestingly enough, the Dominion voting system, the Dominion BMD voting systems were originally designed to meet that need. And there are other systems out there that can meet that need. I'm not suggesting that would be the selection that Georgia should pursue, but at the end of the day, those who have special needs would have accommodations, appropriate accommodations.
Thank you, Senator. My last question is on line 89 of the bill. It directs to shall be installed. It strikes the word either
Yep.
simultaneously or gradually. And so the language reads voting system shall be installed simultaneously
Correct.
within the county municipality. And so when it says simultaneously and it says shall, that means a must. Is there any plans for the state to buy any of these printers? We just passed HB 581 or 481, the floating homestead exemption. And so if you're going to roll this out, and this is after the digest is set and counties have to buy it, where are they going to get the money from?
I think if you will look further in the bill, you'll see that the state is committed to providing the necessary equipment, Counties are allowed to supplement that if they choose, as long as they select equipment that's compatible. Municipalities are also allowed. We did discuss and debate whether or not it should be gradual or simultaneous. At the end of the day, we need consistency. I think there's a lot of advantages to having a consistent approach from the standpoint of equipment, from the standpoint of training, from the standpoint of operation. So we do recognize that this is a substantial change. This is an opportunity for us to move to the next generation of voting system. We've spent almost a decade now in our current environment. I think it's time for us to consider alternatives. This is an alternative.
And Senator, my final question would be, since counties purchase many of these printers, is the state prepared to offer a buyback program so that counties don't have machines they can't use, where the state will then buy back all of the equipment that we have forced counties to purchase along with paper, so we're not sitting on it and wasting taxpayer money in my county where the state has got, 14 billion in surplus. I think the state could afford to buy them back and should, to make counties back whole.
The current Dominion Systems contract expires at the end of 2018, 19. And so I think it's it's outlived its useful life. I recognize that when the state originally got into providing support for elections, they provided equipment. We're proposing the same alternative here. We do think it's going to be substantially less expensive. We recognize that I'm not really sure there's additional printing costs. I mean, when I say printing on demand or pre-printed forms, but at the end of the day, this should provide us a more efficient way to conduct elections in Georgia and a more effective way so that the electors are confident in their ballots cast.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, can you share the fiscal note with the committee?
We don't have one at this time.
A fiscal note.
Mhm. No.
Happy to. I agree with the senator. I think before this legislation becomes law, we're going to have to go through that process. You need to understand, Senator, that it's 2025. We're at the end of a legislative session at 2025. As we work through the process of this legislation, if it were to pass the committee and go through the Senate, it would go to the House, but it would not be eligible for consideration until 2026. It gives us a substantial amount of time to evaluate and refine this legislation, and then hopefully move forward in 26. We've got an election in 26, but at the end of the day, we've got to be ready to implement this pretty soon after that point. You'll notice there's no implementation date, but we do point out that it should be implemented as soon as it is practical. Okay, as soon as possible. Is it possible today? It's not possible today. And I would suggest to you that this legislation is for us to chart a path forward, to move away from an electronic environment that people have concerns about, to move to a physical environment with physical ballots, hand marked, that people have more confidence in. And if you will notice, 67% of America votes utilizing a hand marked paper ballot.
All right. Thank you. Number 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you made this point earlier, but looking at the long-term costs for the state, how much is it going to cost to upgrade our current machines, we're being told?
Well, we've been estimates have run as high as 66 million. I would not be comfortable with investing state taxpayer dollars in that alternative. I think we have to get a fiscal note on this approach and see how it compares. Realize that the objective here is to chart a course for a solution that can meet the needs of Georgia for the next decade.
That was going to be my point. No matter where that fiscal note lands, I hope we'll look at this in a long-term lens of what it's going to cost down the road to keep upgrading other types of equipment as well. So I think it's important we look at this. We not just look at the costs now, but are we also saving the state money down the road as well?
I would hope that this would be a standard system that does not require substantial follow-up and upgrades. It's not software driven, and it's secure. And so I'm hopeful. Now, again, I acknowledge we need to refine and review, but I would also say we need to move forward today.
That's right. Number 7, Mr. Leader.
Yep. Chairman Burns, thank you for your hard work on this. And as we talked yesterday when we worked through this bill, I think we decided to go with the print on demand ballots just
Okay.
because of the lack of accountability. If you have a lot of pre-printed ballots, and there'd be a lot of issues logistically throughout the counties and the city elections and the statewide elections. And so we decided to stick with the pre-printed ballot. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I'm not sure you gain anything by allowing jurisdictions to pre-print ballots and have to deal with the chain of custody requirements
Correct.
associated with that. One of the biggest advantages of a print-on-demand system is there are no stray ballots. There's one ballot printed for one election.
I'd also like to point out to the committee that while cost is a factor, we should always be sensitive to the cost of government services. There's nothing more important, in my opinion, in these elections than to make sure they're fair and transparent. And so we need to get this policy correct this time going forward. And we'll worry about the cost when we get the numbers in, but then we'll have opportunities to budget for those expansions in the future. So let's get the policy right, decide what's good for Georgia, let the citizens of Georgia feel confident and restore the trust in our system. And then we'll find the funding to appropriate the necessary monies to upgrade these systems. So thank you for all your hard
Thank
work.
you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, let's move to the other side over here. Number 13.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe we'll update the microphones in this room in the next 20 years.
I believe that'll happen soon.
Maybe we'll be all gone, hopefully. Chairman, I just want to say thank you for your work on this. I do want to put a finer point on what you talked about earlier in terms of security. I think we've seen the last couple of years, I think from the Secretary of State's office, I think some, not consistent investments as it relates to security or cybersecurity. I think they've been a little bit of a patchwork as we've gone through the budget process. I know you and I have had those conversations openly in committee and even, off to the side. And so I think this bill kind of moves us towards, a more predictable pathway, I think, for the citizens of Georgia, and making sure that elections are secure, but we're also making the proper investments to keep up with technology, but also too, to make sure that the people know what they're getting with their entire election system. So I just want to say thank you for your hard work on this and for the work you've done over the years.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Number 9, Senator 14.
Yes, sir. Good work. Just a question on page 2. I know the question came of cost.
Yep.
Line 33, it says the state shall furnish a uniform optical scanning voting system and ballot on-demand printing system. Does that mean that the state will pay, is what I read that
Yes,
as?
that's correct.
Okay,
So this is the exact language that is currently in legislation.
Okay.
So that when the current system was procured, the state provided that to the jurisdictions. And we're suggesting that the state be responsible as we go through this upgrade process.
line 44 says that the Secretary of State is authorized to conduct pilot programs.
Yes.
And I wanted to just to test and to evaluate the use. Is that in actual elections, or how is that used?
The Secretary of State routinely
Okay.
evaluates voting systems and verifies them. Realize if you look carefully here, the Secretary of State is responsible for certifying this process.
Got it.
And so we have not changed that. We've not made adjustments there. He is still the responsible party
Okay.
that would implement and certify the election process. He'd also be responsible for the training of our local election officials to ensure that they are prepared in an operational setting.
Right.
Now, again, as we look at the calendar and we look at the challenges of 26 and then 27 and then 28, it is not too early for us to begin addressing this challenge.
Very good. Excellent job.
All right. Number 14.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, when does our contract with Dominion expire?
My understanding is that it runs through 2029. It was implemented in 2019. Now, I may be a year off,
Okay.
but I would suggest to you that we are at the end of a cycle,
Right.
a decade.
Right. Thank you.
All right. back to the other side here real quick again. Number 3.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if you turn with me on lines, page 6 and 7, I think there just needs to be some edits here because if I understand you correct, Mr. Chairman, your goal here is to remove all electronic voting machines, all electronic recording devices, save the
With-
optical.
With the exception of those that are necessary for accommodating individuals with special needs.
Okay, I don't.
So you're looking at line 159?
No, I'm looking, so line 128, except for counties or municipalities using voting machines or direct recording electronic units.
Again, some counties may do that to accommodate special needs. Is that not correct? I'm looking to Ledge Council. Yeah, municipal.
So I guess I'm not seeing where that exception is being made, where it's clear, because it sounds
You're-
like you're actually giving permission for local municipalities to continue to use these. And then the same issue on the next page. Again, when we talk about some of the penalties here for violating, so if you go with me to
Yep.
129,
Right.
I mean, sorry, 159,
Yes.
line 159.
Right.
So I believe if we're going to be comprehensive about some of these punishments, right now we have it's a crime if you willfully tamper with the list, the voter certificate, the numbered list of voters, the ballot box, the machine, the direct recording electronic
Right.
equipment,
See it,
right?
right?
The electronic ballot marker, which you are saying we're not going to have anymore.
Well, you could have them for special
For s-
needs.
okay.
Individuals. You got to realize
Sure.
we're not, it could be DRE or it could be BMD. So
Okay.
let's use the acronym so that when I accommodate a special needs individual, it cannot be a hand marked paper ballot. It has to be some form of electronic interface. Both DREs, direct recording equipment, direct recording of elections, and BMDs, the ballot marking devices, satisfy the need for accommodating special needs individuals.
Right. I hear that. What my point is here, I think that we've left out actually protecting the tampering with the ballot itself. Because you are now adding
Okay.
just a ballot straight up. Right. So we list if you tamper with the list, the certificate, the voters, the ballot box, the voting machine, but we don't actually say that it's a crime to tamper with the ballot itself.
Happy to entertain a friendly amendment to clarify your concerns if that's the will of the committee.
And then I would ask that we clarify here. I hear you, and I think you're right. Like, we need to make sure there's provision for people with special needs. I'm just not seeing that language here in the bill where it says that it's being designated, it's remaining online only for that purpose.
I'll look on section 9. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not right. Turn to Ledge Council and see if you can help me here. Where's the accommodation clause?
See an accommodation clause.
Uh-uh.
Section 5. I got it. Okay. So lines 115 through 118.
Got it.
Notwithstanding provision of code section 21-300 to the contrary, each polling place in this state utilizing optical scanning voting system shall be equipped with at least one electronic ballot marker that meets the requirements set forth in this part that is accessible to individuals with disabilities. And again, that could be a DRE, could be a
Sure.
BMD.
Yes. So again, it's just there. I don't see anything that's limiting the use of these machines. So you can have at least one, but
You have at least one.
you could have 20 and just let everybody use it, right? Like, I mean, I just don't see, I think your goal here is to move everybody who feasibly can be on the hand marked the whatever paper ballot. You don't use the
Senator is
handwritten.
correct.
Right.
Senator is
So
correct.
I just don't think our language is quite getting us there. And I think there are multiple places in which we actually do need to add protections for the ballot itself.
Okay.
Since principally we are not needing to protect as much the direct recording electronic
Right.
equipment.
Absolutely.
We now need to actually protect and say that it is legal to willfully tamper with the ballot itself. And there's several places throughout the bill where I think we need to
would
do that.
suggest You have an attorney to your right who could perhaps suggest some language to accommodate your desire.
I think there's an attorney all the way to the right that we all should rely upon.
Well,
All
he-
the way to the right. He's coming over here.
oh my goodness.
Tag him in. Tag.
To the last point, there actually already are a number of different penalty provisions in the code that address ballot tampering with ballots, altering ballot, like the physical ballot itself.
Okay.
It's just not these code sections that deal with the alteration or tampering with the election equipment. So there are specific criminal penalties for tampering with a person's ballot. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, and just so the committee knows, I guess, we want to make sure, as the leader said, that we get the policy correct here. So, and I know that the chairman here is going to have to step out to another meeting here very soon. So we're gonna bring this back up probably later. And I know we've got a lot of folks that want to speak to the bill, but if y'all want to go ahead and finish your questions, and then we'll turn to testimony and then kind of go from there. Number 4.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to reiterate what I said last meeting as well, is I support generally the use of hand-marked paper ballots, been supportive of that since 2018, 2019, when the state first made a decision to go the route that it went. So here we are, which is why I'm gonna ask you this question.
Sure.
Because I heard the leader speak about pre-printed ballots in a way, and I don't want to be here 2, 3, 5 years from now with conspiracies about ballot on demand. So most other states
Yep.
use pre-printed ballots. And
For election day voting. So my understanding is that most states use print on demand for early voting.
Okay.
Early in-person voting. But many states use pre-printed ballots for election day.
and we have a robust early voting program that many
do.
states do not have.
We do.
And my concern is with ballot on demand. I actually have chain of custody concerns about ballot on demand because you can print many more ballots than that you may not be able to keep track of, versus when you have pre-printed ballots, the elections officer can deliver a set number of ballots that can be issued and tracked the entire way, just like you would track keys. When you're printing it, you can print an unlimited number of keys, and then you're trying to figure out where those keys went.
I would
So-
suggest you print one at a time and you deliver it to the elector. The elector makes their choices
Understood,
and then has it tabulated.
understood, but you can see the risk there with multiple machines at a
recognize that-
precinct.
That printer, that print on demand system is tied to your voter check-in, their verification. So we currently use No Ink as a vendor for poll pads, which verify an elector's eligibility. One option, there are others, but one option is to tie the No Ink process of elector verification to the ballot printing. So you just don't print it. It's not a human connectivity there. It's the connection between the poll pad check-in and the ballot for that specific elector. And if I use a pre-printed ballot, especially in precincts where there are multiple ballot styles, I could hand the wrong pre-printed ballot to the elector, and I could unfortunately create issues with the overall system. But if I use an election system that uses the poll pad approach to check me in and verify my eligibility, and then print me one ballot specifically to my election options, that clarifies that. I think it cleans it up. I'm not overly concerned with an excess number of print on demand ballots. I'm more concerned with pre-printed ballots that are more difficult to control. Now, we've had them for years and we continue to use them. We go back to the concept of serialization in some form that's never been adopted. At the end of the day, we have a tough challenge with chain of custody in our current system. I believe that what we can do with this system is hopefully have a much more secure chain of custody. It's only one ballot per election.
And maybe I missed this, but you mentioned the Dominion contract. The Dominion system has an optical scanning.
They do. And matter of fact, we use it. We use the Dominion optical scanning system for absentee ballots today.
So why couldn't we just use those scanners
There's
for?
no requirement that we not use it. All right. So it could be an alternative on the implementation side, but we would not use it with the ballot marking devices. And we would not use it with any code, with any non-human readable code.
But you're not saying that we cannot use
Oh, no.
those
You can-
scanners that are already
Yeah,
there,
the
already
scanners that are
purchased.
already there that are functional and operational. I think if we start looking at the operational component, I'm not sure. The one issue with our current scanners, whether they're optical scanners or they use the QR code, the imaging quality is not what it needs to be. We're somewhere around 200 dots per inch and we need to be a lot higher. I'd love to say 1,600 dots an inch, but I realize there are storage issues associated with those images. But we were successful in a full verified recount in our last election. I was very pleased with that, where we could take every ballot image, we could verify every election. And I thought that was an excellent start. We'd do the same thing in the future, but we'd use an optically scanned ballot image that was hand marked. Same thing.
Good deal. Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't want you to be late to your next committee meeting.
But I'm gonna come back
But you've got a list of things to work on, and I look forward to having you back very, very soon. Hold on, Mr. Chairman.
Burns, could you, I don't know if you want to turn my mic on. You can probably hear me. Could you work with Senator Jackson on her concerns? I think what she's asking makes sense. If we can tie some of these issues down to get her satisfied, I'd like to do that. But
I'd be happy to work with Senator Jackson.
we
and
appreciate
Senator
your-
Estevez and Senator Malloy.
and Senator Estevez and Mallow as well. But we do have a talented attorney over here on the right.
Talented attorney who can help us.
And I hope while you're gone, he will take notes and,
All right.
and make some suggestions on how to continue to perfect this overnight. Thank you.
Come back.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you being here. We'll take notes for you while you're gone. Now we're going to take some public comment and hear from some voters and different groups. But I think there's about 20 on here. So I please ask that you try to keep it at about 2 minutes so that everybody can have an opportunity to speak. I know some of you may say the same thing, but we want to hear from all of you. So I want to go ahead and get started with Brad Carver from the Georgia Republican Party. Brad, if you'll come on down and if you'll grab that mic on the.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Brad Carver, on behalf of the Georgia Republican Party. I chair the 6th Congressional District and chair the Election Confidence Task Force, a role I've had since 4 years ago, January 13th, 2021. I want to commend this body who has worked very hard, and Chairman Burns, who has just stepped out for the many years of work to make the state of Georgia the easiest state to vote and the hardest to cheat in this country. You have made a lot of progress. I think that y'all take measured approaches and make our system better. In each election, we learn more and more and more. And this is another step in that direction. And I just wanted to say that we support Chairman Burns' bill. I am a very poor substitute for Dr. Jan Johnston, but she is our vice chairman of the state election board. She is right now en route to Japan and cannot be with us today, but I'm going to quickly read a statement from her because this is an issue of importance to her. In the words of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, let us never forget that government is ourselves, the ultimate rulers of our democracy, and not a president and senators and congressmen and government officials, but the voters of this country. Hand-marked paper ballots are used worldwide. The fact that over 120 countries vote with hand-marked paper ballots is a compelling argument for using this voting method for elections. A hand-marked paper ballot is an authoritative physical record that blends efficiency with security. For generations, France's elections have been conducted entirely on hand-marked paper ballots, cast in person and counted manually. Many countries pair elections with hand-marked paper ballots and manual counting, while those with the larger populations may use optical scanning for counting votes. Some countries that use hand-marked paper ballots, the United Kingdom, France, Canada, Australia, Japan, Germany, Sweden, Norway, Finland, Spain, Belgium, Ireland, New Zealand, Switzerland, Denmark, Italy, Portugal, Austria, Mexico, Israel, South Africa, and Greenland. In the United States, over 2/3 of the U.S. states use hand-marked paper ballots. And of course, all states use hand-marked paper ballots for absentee voting. The state of New Hampshire is one to particularly talk to you about. Secretary of State for the last 44 years there, Bill Gardner, is a strong supporter and advocate for hand-marked paper ballots. Gardner states, "I am a lot more of a believer in paper ballots after all these years. The more moving parts you have to the election process, the more problems you're going to have." President Trump wants hand-marked paper ballots. The RNC proposes hand-marked paper ballots. The late President Jimmy Carter requires hand-marked paper ballots for trustworthy elections. Almost all of our surrounding states use hand-marked paper ballots. It is recognized by election experts, recommended by computer experts, used by most developed and democratic countries, used for all absentee voting in the United States. As this committee moves forward with planning for future elections and the next contract and beyond the Dominion contract, Georgia should consider conducting elections with secure, accounted, audited, hand-marked paper ballots. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Brad. Next up is Victoria Cruz. If you'll introduce yourself too, please. I don't know who you're with, unless you're just here representing yourself. Okay. That works too.
Good answer.
Good afternoon, committee and chairman. I do appreciate the senator's work on this bill. I think that hand-marked paper ballots are what we've been asking for. A hand-marked paper ballot is the gold standard of a voter verifiable paper ballot because the voter filled it out. What was printed through the BMDs was not. A voter who walked away from that machine would not necessarily remember what they picked. And if it really did match what they put down on the paper, what came out on the paper. They are unique and identifiable as such, unlike machine-generated summaries and QR codes, which are not unique. Hand-marked paper ballots show the voter's intent, and the ballot is preserved as a permanent record of that intent. Hand-marked paper ballots also provide enhanced auditability because, like I mentioned before, you can't verify what was on that BMD screen when the voter touched it. You can only look at what was printed on the paper, but the hand-marked paper ballots takes away that uncertainty. No upgrade or investment can really secure the Dominion BMDs or the voting system in its totality against malware-based fraud, because those systems were never designed to be fraud-proof. So I also believe it's going to be less expensive. I think the fiscal note will be a surprise, a pleasant surprise for everyone if we stick with that. But I would also like to add, I would love to see hand counting as well. Hand counting has become a much more sophisticated procedure. And the Senator Jackson, who had a question about how my vote was counted, the publicly recorded hand-marked ballot counting, all of that is recorded. It can be live streamed as well. So every ballot that is looked at and counted by two parties on either side, you can see that. You can have a watch party at home and watch the entire election be counted. So I would suggest transitioning to that in the future if it's possible. I think that would be wonderful.
All right. Thank you. Let's hear from a couple opposed, I guess. Michael Beach, retired. Come on down.
Here.
Thanks so much for being here today and all the work that's gone into this. I'm Michael Beach, Chair Watson Committee members, and I'm an assistant poll manager. I just want to speak a little bit about this, that I think what we're hearing basically, at least what I'm hearing, is we have a system that's already a non-electronic system as ballot marking. It's my finger on a screen. You've already tasked the Secretary of State in getting the names of who that person votes for onto the ballot. I can understand the QR code thing. So what comes out of that printer is my ballot on demand, and it's my vote. I can check it just like I could anything else. It goes through the same scanner, et cetera, et cetera. So you've essentially got the same system. I'd like you to not think that you're going to get away without printing ballots, because every precinct basically has all these ballots in a bag that we count and we lock and we check chain of custody and that are there in case of an emergency. If the power goes out, I've got to have a hard copy for everybody to do. So you're still going to have printed ballots, provisional ballots, etc. And I think that's really important to remember, that we've essentially got the same system. So let's look at the system and see how it can be best improved. Everything can be improved, but let's not think that this is somehow different. As we heard from the esteemed senator here, it's why are we doing this, and why are we talking about this now that concerns me. As seen over the past years, adding more rules will never satisfy those who are convinced elections are not secure or voter rolls are inaccurate, or that everyone should be forced to vote on election day, or that we have paper ballots. It doesn't verify that optical reader that, oh, I know I got my vote counted, and it won't. And so there will always be conspiracy theories coming back up about the next system if we don't stop pandering to it. And so please get the best system, make it secure, because we have a secure system right now. I'm sorry to tell all of you, but, and let's move forward. Show me the data. Okay.
All right.
Isn't any.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Amy Lethenthal.
Good afternoon, senators. Thank you for listening to me. I'm with a group called Necessary Trouble. I'm also affiliated with Black Voters Matter and Indivisible, and I'm a human being like you all. And I want to say that in August 6, 1965, President Lyndon Baines Johnson wrote the 1965 Voting Rights Act. I was 9 years old. And I am deeply grateful that our president did that. I think SB 214 is a part of a plan to sort of undermine the voting rights of all our citizens. And I want our voting rights. I want everyone to vote. And I want there to be a free and fair election, which, by the way, I was a poll worker for this last election. I didn't approve of the results in the executive branch, but I abided by them. And I helped run the poll. I was a greeter. And I think the elections were very fair. I don't like the results. And I'm against SB 214 because I think we have free and fair elections. And I agree with Senator Jackson and Senator Estevez. And I think we need to continue to support the actual equipment we have. And I'll say one other thing, because you are an ethics committee. I was much in favor of expanding Medicaid. We have billions of dollars in Georgia, and I wish we had expanded Medicaid. And to sit here and spend millions of dollars on machines that do not improve our voting system or a hand count system, to me, is not ethical. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Amy. How about a neutral? Cindy Battles. Come on down. Yeah.
Good afternoon, committee members. Thank y'all so much for the opportunity to speak. We'll do as quick a job in the 2 minutes. My name is Cindy Battles, and I am the Policy and Engagement Director for the Georgia Coalition for the People's Agenda. I may be one of the only people in this side anyway, that remembers 2019 and HB 316 and the process that we went through to get the machines that we have now. And one of the things that I would say personally is a lot of the talking points, like the don't worry about the cost, we'll figure that out later. Y'all, that's kind of what you told us when we asked for a fiscal note in 2019. So knowing that we have until 2028, one of the things that I would suggest is taking this time to look at the actual impacts, talk to election supervisors, talk about processes. I'm not convinced paper ballots are the best option because I haven't seen how they impact older voters, low literacy voters. 1 in 6 voters in the state of Georgia have a low literacy rate. So how is that going to impact things? Voters with disabilities, we've talked a lot about what kind of machines they would use. Are they going to have to vote on the Dominion machines? Because what y'all are saying is those Dominion machines aren't reliable. And if they use the hand-marked paper ballots, then do you somehow have a printer that prints in Braille so that they can read it? Like they are legitimate questions. You can be upset all you want. Again, though, a big thing is for this, especially looking at Senate Rule 3-1.4, you actually do need a fiscal note to move forward with this bill. So I would definitely say that before any action is taken on this, that happen. Is this hearing only? I'm a little concerned. I'm a little confused because there's been a lot of work going on. And while I appreciate y'all's integrity and all of that good stuff, I get a little nervous about whether or not we're going to move forward with this bill this session or not. So I think that those are pretty much my concerns. I think we take time to actually study the impact. We get that fiscal note and we make sure that we do this right. Because I feel like if we had done that back in 2019, then maybe some of these suspicions and that kind of thing wouldn't be as present as they are today. That's what I got.
Good deal. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Marcy McCarthy. Back to in favor here, just so everybody knows.
Lean in favor.
You met me. Well, hello, everybody. Good afternoon, Chairman Watson, members of the State Ethics Committee. My name is Marcy McCarthy, and I'm the chairman of the DeKalb GOP, and I'm here to strongly support SB 214. Yesterday, President Trump met with Governor Landry of Louisiana in the Oval Office, stressing the urgent need for watermarked paper ballots. The concern was echoed at the governor's luncheon, where Governor Kemp in Georgia was distinctly mentioned. The reality is, Georgia's Dominion voting system is outdated and is vulnerable, operating nearly under 20-year-old standards, and will be sunsetted during the midterm elections and completely obsolete before 2026. The cybersecurity expert Ben Cotton has confirmed the security flaws on a nationwide basis that remain unaddressed. The DeKalb GOP's lawsuit against the Georgia Secretary of State also highlights the failure to enforce certification standards, endangering our elections. Now, the Albert sensor, which is the elephant in the room, has been decommissioned as well, or the future of it is in question. Specifically, CISA has defunded CIS, which is the Center for the Internet Security. And why, to begin with, why is an Albert sensor a monitoring device connected to election equipment that is not supposed to be connected to the internet in the first place? Now that they're defunded by CISA, who is managing these Albert sensors? So President Trump has said it best. If you went to paper ballots and same-day voting, and if you went to voter ID, which Georgia has, and also one other thing, you want proof of citizenship, you will have a much safer election. Georgia does have voter ID, but SB 214 ensures our systems are truly transparent, secure, and audible by transferring certification oversight to the state election board and mandating hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballots. So I do urge you to pass SB 214 and restore faith in Georgia's elections. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Marcia. Next up, Field Cersei. Come on down. You left yours blank, but I kind of know where you are.
Well, you'll find out in a couple minutes. Thank you, Senator Watson and committee. My name is Field Cersei. I'm from Grady County, and I'm with Georgians for Truth. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I stand here before you to advocate for a return to election fundamentals that ensure transparency, security, and public trust. Georgia must transition to a hand-marked paper ballot, hand-counted at the precinct level, recorded and conducted in public view. Our current electronic voting system presents three fundamental problems. First, multiple analysts from different perspectives have uncovered enormous and troubling patterns of bloated and dirty registrations, widespread irregularities, and ineligible registrations. Georgia must withdraw from the Electronic Registration Information Center, which has failed to maintain accurate voter rolls. Instead, we need a Georgia-controlled system that properly maintains our voter registration database and ensures only eligible citizens are registered to vote. Second, the electronic voting system fails to meet basic security standards required by state law and federal guidelines. The system was not designed with security at its foundation, creating vulnerabilities that constitute a national security risk. When system administrator passwords are publicly available on merchandise, we move beyond negligence into dangerous territory. And I would show you my T-shirt, but the password is a secret. Third, Georgia law, specifically OCGA 212-437, already mandates hand counting of votes and certification at the precinct. The Georgia Supreme Court has upheld this requirement, yet we continue to ignore these legal mandates in favor of a system that prioritizes speed over accuracy. We've effectively outsourced our elections to foreign entities. Dominion Voting Systems, based in Canada, uses software developed by programmers from Serbia and relies on computer chips manufactured in China. Meanwhile, at least 14 major countries successfully conduct elections using hand-marked and hand-counted paper ballots. Taiwan, a country of 24 million people, technologically advanced, they don't trust their electronics to do their elections. They have concern about foreign influence. They do hand-counted, hand-marked, hand-counted paper ballots at the precinct the day of the election. This solution is straightforward. Return voting tabulation to the people. Hand-marked paper ballots counted by hand at the precinct level before ballots are transported, with results recorded and verified in public view. This approach decentralizes our election system, making it more consistent with large-scale, resistant to large-scale manipulation, or increasing public confidence. This isn't about partisan politics. It's about following existing Georgia law and restoring sovereignty to Georgia citizens. Early and fast should not be our standard. True and accurate must be the mantra. The people of Georgia deserve elections that are transparent, secure, and trustworthy. By returning to hand-marked paper ballots with public counting, we can ensure that every legal vote is counted accurately and that our democratic process truly reflects the will of the people. I urge this committee to take bold action to restore election integrity in Georgia. The future of our republic demands it.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Yes, sir. Thank you for driving up here. Janet Grant, you gonna pass? Okay, thank you so much. We got a list here. Marla Tepper. Yep.
Chair Watson, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Marla Tepper and I'm a resident of Decatur. I have served as a poll worker and have seen firsthand how our elections operate with layers of security, accuracy, and transparency. I can tell you with certainty elections in Georgia are safe. They already have multiple belts and suspenders in place to ensure fairness, integrity, and efficiency. This bill really seems like a solution in search of a problem. We don't have a problem here in Georgia with voting, and this bill would only serve to create them. We've heard from the insightful questioning here today about many of the concerns that paper ballots can raise. And no system, as as Michael Beach pointed out, is going to be immune from statements that there is a conspiracy, that there are problems, or that the ballots are questionable. So what we should be focusing on is keeping the integrity of our elections as they have been. That has worked well for Georgians, and we should keep that going. I may be one of the few people in this room that has voted with paper ballots. And one of the concerns that I have is something that I experienced on multiple occasions. That is, like you were when you were a school child filling in a test in which you had to fill in the blank. Here, the machine, when I filled in the blank, the machine spit the ballot back a number of times. That's something that certainly we cannot have happen here in Georgia. So any system we put in place has to be checked, and we have to make sure that that is not a problem that we encounter. Imagine the chaos that will exist at polls if every voter's ballot is rejected like that. To the extent that this bill does move forward, I support the idea that we have to look at it carefully, that we have to have testing in advance of implementation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Joseph Kirk, Gabrielle. Joseph. You behind the pole over there, Joseph. Come on down.
Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Kirk. I'm the election supervisor from Bartow County. I'm also the president-elect of GAVREA, the Georgia Association of Voter Registration and Election Officials. I'm here today speaking on behalf of that organization. We are professionals who are charged with ensuring that every ballot counts and every voice is heard. The question of how our citizens will cast their ballot in future elections is not a small one, and we are grateful you chose to start the conversation this year. We, of course, will honor the will of the legislature, whatever method of voting you choose. However, we do believe that a system that primarily uses hand-marked paper ballots, printed from on-demand printers, and tabulated using precinct-based optical scanners is a viable option for future elections in the state of Georgia. We've also realized that a change of this magnitude is complicated. And we stand ready to offer expertise, our experience to ensure that the transition is as seamless as possible. And that's our message for the day. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them now.
I just had one quick question. I know that there's a lot of training that went into Dominion, I assume.
Yes, sir.
And I assume a hand-marked paper ballot type, as the chairman presented, would that be less training or more training, or?
Well, do you mean for the poll workers or for the county officials?
For everybody involved.
It depends. If we're getting a whole new system, we'll have to train on how to set the system up, how to program it, test it, those sorts of things. We'll train the poll workers on new workflows for that go with hand-marked paper ballots in polling place. As has been mentioned, much of the country does this. With enough time, we can get that done. We just need the time to do the training and make sure all the details are ironed out.
Okay. I think there's another question too.
Mr. Kirk, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I thank you for your many years of service to the state of Georgia and all the other election officials throughout the state, and appreciate your input very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Anybody else? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Wishing. Okay.
Thank you. So you talked about many places across the country use hand-marked paper ballots. Are they using pens? Are they using stamps? Like, what does that actually look like in reality? Do you know? You may not know. That might be beyond your expertise, but
I cannot tell you if they're using a stamp or a pen. I do believe many of them do use just a pen to mark the ballot. And that does allow safer voters to overvote their ballot, or they'll be warned about undervotes when they get to the scanner. But again, these are just workflows we have to work through and make sure we have enough equipment there to handle anything that happens.
okay, thank you.
Oh my goodness. What have I started? Number 4.
It's your fault, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned if there were new equipment, a new system, then it would take some time. With the current system, your understanding about what this bill proposes, particularly with the scanners, what would, I'm assuming we'd be able to use this current scanners for hand-marked paper ballots.
I believe so. Currently, our scanners can scan different pieces of paper, either the paper summary ballot printed from the BMD or paper, say, emergency ballot if the BMDs go down that's hand marked. If we wanted to use our current system, we would have to upgrade it so it could print what we refer to as a full face ballot for people that have disabilities, so it looks the same. We would also need to purchase ballot on demand printers to ensure voters are getting the right ballot for them.
Okay. So the whole system doesn't necessarily have to be replaced. They're just pieces of the system.
That's very much y'all's decision. But I believe the system with certain modifications could work as we're describing.
Okay. All right. You good? Okay. I think we got one more here, or 14.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to let the other members know that the election officials have training every year through the Gavrio, and it's usually in Athens or Savannah. So they're up on the laws and legislation and equipment. And so that is constantly being done. And so, you know, any change in that, I was there when Secretary Cox went to the Debo machines back many years ago. And so that was when electronics was just first coming out, and it was a learning curve, but now everybody's got these little magic boxes in their pocket. So I think with the training and everything that our people do, that wouldn't be a difficult push. Thank you.
Good deal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking a couple questions. Your folks are the ones that are going to have to implement all this. So thank you for being here and speaking to us. Yes, sir. Marcia Powell.
Column gets me every time. Hi, Senators. My name is Marissa Pyle. I'm with All Voting is Local Action. I think a lot of folks have gone over the fact that the language of this bill is short, it's simple on its face. I think everybody in this room would agree that voters should have access to options and ways that they trust to cast their ballot. But I also think that we have all seen that implementing this bill could be potentially very difficult, and we do have serious concerns. Mainly that right now, Georgia is in year 7 of 10 of a $100 million plus contract for our current voting system, that this potentially risks breaking. I do not know if there are penalties associated with breaking that contract early. These are on-demand printers, like folks have been discussed. They are certified, they're available. They also are expensive when done well. In Arizona, there was a case in Maricopa County where officials used the lowest cost printers and then dealt with them breaking repeatedly during a major election. And after that, officials discarded them in favor of higher quality printers. To quote from a news report, to replace its faulty $300 OKI printers, Maricopa Elections Director Scott Jarrett chose a new $7,000 model of Lexmark printer the current county has previously used at some places. Georgia, for context, has over 2,600 precincts, making that cost on the low end estimate anywhere from $14 to $19 million, assuming every precinct would only need one printer, which is a very low estimate. In addition, in this bill currently, there is no delay to account for bidding, procurement, delivery, anything like that. It would take effect July 1st of the year in which it's passed, which would then ostensibly require those machines to be implemented, procured, trained, and ready for fall of that same year. Our prior system, for context, took about a year and a half to fully purchase, deliver, implement. This timeline is not feasible, put simply. I do urge, as others have, for you to consider who is behind this bill. Is this supported, and is this being asked for by the folks who actually run our elections? I said at the beginning that voters should have options. Georgia voters, as the system currently stands, are lucky that we can choose between voting on a BMD or voting on a hand-marked paper ballot in the form of a mail ballot. Any voter in Georgia and under our current system can request an absentee ballot that is filled out by hand. They can mail that back, return it in person, or use a drop box. with so much time left in the contract, this is the time to begin the process of exploring that. But we need to do it thoroughly. We need to take the time to research, rebid this contract when it expires, explore all of the options available, and not rush into one of them potentially at the expense of election officials or voters.
Thank you. Stephanie Alley.
Thank you, sir. So my name is Stephanie Alley. I've been doing voter work in Georgia since 2010. So happy to be here. I currently work with New Georgia Project. We don't have a stance on paper ballots, but I wanted to bring out a couple of things that haven't come up yet. One being that one of my great honors was having a mentor by the name of Galen Tootle. May he rest in power. He was a disability rights, voter rights activist. One of his biggest pieces was that he taught me was always that it's not about making sure that disabled voters have access to the ballot. It's about that they have free access to the ballot to do so on their own. He would always tell me it's not about being able to like have my wife with me or my daughter with me to go vote. I should be able to walk into any polling place, and he was a blind voter, to be able to vote on my own. And so I've heard a lot of things today talking about like alternative options for voters with disabilities, but they still, I even heard some folks talking to the back about, oh, you know, just assistance. What we haven't really heard with paper ballots just yet is what is an equal option that allows voters with disabilities to freely vote their own ballot without an additional assistance. And that does ensure that we are voting, as the chairman noted earlier, we want there to be a consistent system for all voters. I think what we might get into if we have something like, oh, there's a BMD for some voters, paper for other voters, you may be looking at kind of an equalization issue, one person, one vote issue. I'm not a lawyer, don't quote that, but that is a concern that comes up and is something that Mr. Tootle and I also often talked about, the idea of not having the same opportunity. The other issue I want to flag very quickly is, like I said, I've been doing this work for well over a decade, and I've had the pleasure of working in South Georgia on election day. And very distinctly remember going between two precincts that took me almost an hour to get between in the same county, going through dirt roads, backwoods. And what concerns me about paper ballot use after doing that kind of work, this was doing work down in Terrell, Randolph, and Clay counties, is the fact that if there were, say, a machine that broke, a previous speaker talked about how those were happening in Maricopa over in Arizona, the amount of time that voters could be waiting for someone to come fix a printer, for an expert to come address any issues. I know every printer I've ever worked has paper jams consistently, that voters may be having to be forced to leave because of the time commitment it takes to go back and forth between these locations. So the fact that it may more negatively affect rural voters and disabled voters, I don't feel like has been addressed in this bill yet. I did hear Leader Gooch say that there's a lot more to be worked on, and I would look forward to those issues being addressed in here as well.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, hold on.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and a question.
Yes.
So if you look at this map, 2/3 of this country are already voting with this proposed method.
Sir.
Surely if they figured it out, we can do it.
I believe we could.
California,
believe we're
Oregon,
smarter than Montana.
Maine, New York. I mean, so it can't be difficult. If we have 3 years to prepare for it, we'll have it ready, right?
I do hope so. I do
Thank
hope
you.
so.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Julie Adams.
Thank you. So my name is Julie Adams, and you know, it's interesting listening to the comments that I've heard today, because the Dominion voting system, our whole voting system in Georgia, is the most complex voting system. It takes a lot to train the employees, the poll workers on it. But I find that it's hard to, quite honestly, for Board of Elections members to understand what our voting system does and how it works. And as you guys have stated, 2/3 of the country is using paper ballots. I also heard, I saw something just amazing the other day. Somebody had the Florida election code, and it was like 120 pages. Do you know our election code is 604 pages? That's pretty complicated. But I want to tell you just really quickly my personal experience with a problem with Dominion. So in 2023, I was a credentialed observer of the DeKalb County Commissioner 2 race, the recount. And so after I'd been there for a while, they asked me if I would actually count. So I was impressed when I was observing. I felt like they were doing it really well. It was very well organized and seemed, like a great setup. And then they had me count till almost 1 o'clock on the night of Memorial Day. So that was a little dedication there. But I was really pleased with the way they did it. We all know how that race came out, that the winner of the race had been in third place. And then when we did the hand recount, the person in third place, and this was for the primary, the person in third place was actually in first place. And she went on to win that seat. So shortly after that, I think it was an attempt to squelch election deniers. One of the reporters from the AJC did an open records request of all of the ballot images for the DeKalb race for that primary in 2023. So being invested since I'd been there and counted, I was very interested in seeing it, went to all the trouble to download all of those ballots and started looking at them. And I found the most amazing thing, something you can never unsee. The ballot images had the ballot, how the person had voted, and it had the audit mark page next to it. And the audit mark page is what the QR code is reading. It was amazing to see these files one after one, that this page said the voter voted for Michelle Long Spears. This page, that was what the QR code was reading, said another candidate. And you can't unsee that. I know every time I go to vote, I know. I mean, I do it with just saying a prayer. Please let my vote be my vote, because I've seen it. And it's unbelievable. Obviously, I'm in big support of the hand-marked paper ballots. And I know you guys have been here for a while, so I had other things to say that I won't say, but thank you all for what you're doing.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Kevin, can't read your handwriting here, Kevin. There you are. Come on. Okay.
Good afternoon, Senators. Thanks for all your work. Greatly appreciate it. I'm a Fulton County resident. I've worked various elections as a poll worker and poll tech. 90% of the duties are catering to the machines. Voting is about casting and counting votes, not working machines, not about running the machines. But in Georgia, that's what it's about. These machines produce an unverifiable QR code, as Julie just mentioned, produced by a BND that is, again, unverifiable, generated and tabulated by closed proprietary software. There's tons and tons of lines of code for counting votes. 1, 2, 3, 4. How hard could it be? But these machines are just, they're a nightmare. Only uncomplicated but fully audible hand-marked paper ballots is really the answer. It's a reliable and cost-effective. One thing we do have to make sure that the optical scanners do not, or there's no computerization in them. There's no code. They're merely just scanners that scan it, tabulate the result. 1 vote, 2 vote, 3 vote. And I'm all for hand-marked paper ballots. It's simple. As you guys said, it's used all over the place. There's systems, there's ways to do it that takes all the computerization out of it. Computerization is great for some stuff, but it don't work real well for voting. That's it, guys. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Rachel Lastinger. Go ahead.
To hear from today. But my name is Rachel Lastinger with the Voter Access Project in the ACLU of Georgia. We work to ensure voting is easy and accessible for all Georgians. And I'm here to oppose this bill for the financial constraints and lack of fiscal note. I'm not here to talk about a stance on paper ballots or our current voting system. While the sub of SB 214 does address the systemic and infrastructure changes that are needed to implement any form of paper ballots in the state of Georgia, it still does not address the cost. Further, the current contract for our Dominion voting system is up in 2028, so I'm not sure why we cannot spend more time exploring this issue before 2028 and be prepared to make a decision that is good for all counties and voters. This bill would require purchase of ballot-on-demand printers. Some counties do own just one, but most of the smaller counties do not have one of these printers because they can cost up to $22,000. For the good kind that won't break after just one election cycle. We have 2,696 precincts. So just that would be over $59 million just for one printer for each precinct. Our current scanners may still work just fine, but if not, that could be at least $57,000 in cost for one county, according to what Ohio spent on their optimal scanners. And if the current scanners work, you're still likely to need to buy new software or reconfigure the current machines. Overall, there's just a lot of cost to be considered if we want to change our current system again, and then no fiscal note on this bill. And why am I concerned about these costs? We've been closely tracking precinct closures and consolidations happening across the state in recent months, and the majority of these are occurring for cost-saving reasons. We also have repeatedly witnessed counties reduce their early vote hours or opt out of optional weekend voting days to save money. I understand this bill says that the state will pay for these new scanners and printers, but the point is that our election offices are already under significant financial constraints that we aren't addressing, and that is leading them to have to make difficult decisions that impact voters. Financial constraints on counties have a direct impact on voter access. So I'd like for us to really think about the cost of our elections and how those costs are affecting voters, and to be aware of financial implications when we are introducing legislation. So therefore, I'm asking you to not rush this massive system change for our electoral process, but take the time to fully understand what will work best for election offices and voters.
Hold on 1 minute, Rachel.
Yeah.
You had a question?
I have a question. How many precincts did you say there are in the state of Georgia?
So this is according to a report from our last electoral cycle. It was 2,696.
2686?
2696.
2696. Okay, Butts County has now gone to one precinct. So they do their early voting and their regular voting in one precinct.
Yeah, a couple
Baldwin
counties have.
County has 16 precincts, which is too many. A lot of counties need to reduce the number of precincts. And advanced voting, early voting, is every county's largest precinct. So that itself has helped reduce the number of precincts that you're going to need in each county, even though when the early voting started, Baldwin County still has not reduced their number of precincts, and they need to. Sometimes on election day, at one of the outlying county precincts, there may only be 10 people to vote that whole day.
Yeah, but for those 10 people, it matters because that's voter access for those 10 voters. But
Exactly. Yeah.
We'll talk about this precinct consolidation because I think there are a lot of direct impacts that has on voter access that we're seeing.
Yeah. Okay. But I just wanted to bring that up for the committee's attention too, that a lot of things you need to be weighed out. So thank you.
Yeah, a lot to consider.
All right. Thank you. Liz Throop.
Hi there. I'm Liz Troop. and thanks for letting me speak. I notice on page 2, the bill refers to utilizing non-electronic ballot markers. I don't know what that means. Are these non-electronic markers human voters? Pencils? Are they punch cards? It's very strange wording. And I noticed that what was struck from page 4 included allow electors to mark their ballots using a pen, pencil, or other non-electronic writing tool. So I would review why that wording is ambiguous. On page 2, on lines 31 and 32, it says, the system shall use paper ballots which are marked with the elector's choices. We already have that system. The BMD outputs paper ballots that are supposedly marked with the elector's choices, and a lot of us aren't happy with that. So please amend this bill so that the wording is not in the passive voice and is not ambiguous. The other issue, just briefly, that you might want to visit is why this calls for EAC certification for ballot on demand printers. I am not aware that the EAC routinely does that. So you don't want to require that be done if it's not something that they want to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn Karnowinski.
This was about the ID. I don't know about these other things that I know are very important, but I just want to remind everybody, you know, that future generations have to deal with anything that maybe hopefully in most cases it's unintentional, but that can deny somebody, you know, their rights. I'm sure most of us have had the experience that I had talking with somebody about he couldn't get his or he said he couldn't, as I remembered, I forget exactly. This is a few years before the pandemic, but that his military ID wasn't, or they weren't going to accept it. And it reminded him of his father going to vote when he was surrounded by armed men that were, I guess they didn't harm him. I guess he survived, but you know, so he kept that in mind, that he was thankful. And then I wouldn't have stayed saying anything since I said I had a misunderstanding about what this was about, except for that one woman mentioning about Medicaid. And I'm sure you get reminders about it all the time. And I do know someone that I didn't understand until a few years ago that if you don't pay into Medicare, you don't get it, regardless of you get the age and everything like that. But she and her husband had a business and she thought he was paying into it and he wasn't. So Medicaid is her only, you know, I'm sure you've heard many of these, especially being in government, people must be telling you about these things.
All righty. Well, we'll look at that. I appreciate you being here. Thank you.
I think that's it. But just,
Okay.
I guess it isn't the worst thing that can happen to you if somebody tells you their grandma or their parents had trouble with the ID they presented, but I wouldn't wish it on my own kids.
Okay. Thank you. Autumn Miller.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I thank you very much for bringing up this bill, this legislation. I'm a longtime poll worker in multiple states, going back to the pre-internet and pre-cell phone days. And for the past 3 years, I've been a Fulton County poll worker. And I am in favor of this bill because I believe that with hand-marked paper ballots, voters can clearly see what they have marked on the ballot when they insert it into the tabulator. In Fulton County poll worker training, we're told that we need to tell every voter to be sure to review their ballot before putting it into the tabulator to make sure that it accurately reflects the choices that they made. But the QR code, they can't read, and that's what the machine is going to read. So they have no verification that what's being read by the machine is what they selected. And underneath, there's tiny, tiny little print that, especially like our elderly voters and just even young people, I see often, I tell them, please review your ballot to make sure it's accurate. And they'll like look at it and see how tiny it is. Some people don't even see where the information is, and I'll point it out to them. We have magnifying sheets that we can give to them and they can try to figure it out. But a lot of people I see just kind of just give up and put it in. And so therefore, where you were mentioning, like if you vote for Abraham Lincoln, you want to be sure that your ballot is saying Abraham Lincoln. And when you put it in, you know that that's what's going to be counted. But right now with our current system, you can't do that because of that QR code being the qualifying information. So I do support this bill because I believe that hand-marked paper ballots are essential to letting the voter be able to see what they have actually voted for. And but my one comment, a little bit negative, is that I would love to see this implemented much sooner than a few years down the road, because I feel like it's critical to make this change. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Lucia Frazier. Ms. Frazier.
Good afternoon, Lucia Frazier. I'm a Georgia resident, and I do support this bill. I think it's great. I thank Senator Max Burns for putting it together. Very excited about it. I want to emphasize that, people on election boards are preventing, public audit of paper ballots. They're preventing, audits of voter rolls and voter records in general. So this will help us because I think it does create a more transparent process. And it's supposed to be that the public does oversight for our elections. So I think that will help us having these hand-marked paper ballots. Just a couple things I want to mention. I think it was said that our current process is very complicated. I've worked elections as well, and you have to come in 2 hours early to set all that up. And I think having paper ballots will help us help get everybody involved to work elections, because right now they're discouraged and they're, worried about these machines. And so it would be great to have a good cross section of people coming to volunteer on election day. Oh, and I would add that hand count at the precinct would totally take care of anybody's issues with whatever scanner you use. And if you the poll workers can do that really quick. That's what we used to do. You can just hand count and you can compare. Technology is great for speed. You want convenience and speed, but it's not going to be the official record. I think the official record needs to be that the poll workers and, poll watchers are there watching, do the count at the precinct. And now you don't have to worry about once the ballots leave the precinct. Now there's not confidence. But if you do it right there, I think you'll have the confidence you want. We did do this hand count, hand marked paper ballots in municipals. We did it in Milton. It worked great. So if you have questions about that, we can talk more about that. It went very well. And then I would ask with the people with disabilities, I would just ask, what did we do before electronics? So look at whatever those ways were. And, let's get to that so we don't always have to depend on electronics. That's it.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Maria Gaudio, I can't read your writing. She had to go. Okay. Thank you. Tamara Favorito, are you going to speak for both of y'all? Garland signed up as well. Can y'all put it in one speech? Yeah.
Actually, he had to go to another committee hearing.
And he just texted me that it will be long, so he will probably not be
Okay.
back to get.
Well, I hope I don't get that reputation around here, but we're doing a good job of it.
Well, we appreciate you, Mr. Chairman, for hearing all of us.
Yep.
As you know, I'm Tamara Favorito, representing Voter GA, who's led the election integrity movement here for about 20 years. And personally, I have been a poll worker in a couple of states, a poll watcher and poll watcher trainer in 2 different states. And I have voted on hand-marked paper ballots as recently as 2018. And I'd also like to thank Chairman Burns, even though he's not with us, for carrying this amended bill that provides for all in-person voters to cast hand-marked paper ballots, except for the disabled, of course. You know, we were so appreciative of you last year for passing SB 189, which banned the QR code from the ballot marking device ballots. And I'd like to say that as of right now, you are forerunners of President Trump, because he just issued an executive order that included banning any voting system that includes a QR code. So congratulations on getting that done.
We're losing our Democrat vote.
As I have testified before to this committee, there are security issues, there's accuracy and other issues with the scanners, tabulators, and as Senator Jackson brought up, she was concerned about that as well. Publicly recorded hand counting the ballots, we do believe, is the answer. However, I believe there's an important mitigation that we could do here, and that is to have the paper ballots publicly available immediately upon certification at no charge or minimal charge to the requester. Now, as you probably remember, last year, SB 189 made the ballots public record as of January 1st of this year. So I want to give you a couple of examples of responses that we've received. Forsyth County, which is not one of our larger counties, has responded that the charge is $49,000 for us to see the ballots. That's just not doable. Fulton County came back and said that the statute, which is 21-493, mentions the superintendent, but since their ballots are in possession of the county clerk, that it just doesn't apply. So what I would ask as you are continuing to work on this bill is to include an amendment to 21-493 to make the ballots publicly available, practically speaking, because I think what was done last year is just not practical. And I wanted to mention there's been some comments today about the cost of the ballot on demand printers and the problems in Arizona. I have an article here that was done. The problems in Maricopa County were not the printers, even though the county tried to blame it on the printers. And I would like to enter this into the record for all of you. And I will say, since there's been a lot mentioned about no fiscal note on this, in 2019, when the Dominion and other systems were being considered, Voter GA did a cost analysis, and one of the scenarios was hand-marked paper ballots with scanners and servers. And buying it initially was 35% of the ballot marking device with scanners. Now, that was 2019. We can update that. We're happy to help you on that if you're interested. So, but thank you so much for your work on this bill and all the work that you've done on election integrity. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Ginger Bradshaw. This is it. And Ginger will be our last speaker, so no pressure, Ginger. Don't get long-winded on us now.
I promise. My name's Ginger Bradshaw. I live in Fulton County. I've been a poll manager for I don't know how many elections. And I just want to say that I'm so thrilled that y'all are moving towards paper ballots. That's what we've been pushing for. And initially, I just changed some of my comments after Tamara. You know, I was saying that would be great to do a hand counting, like that as a poll manager, you know, by the time those polls close and we get everything done. And that brings up another subject. Common sense. And, you know, there's a lot of talk about common sense these days. There is cost to maintain those machines. There's cost to deliver those to the polling place. And they're these big old honker things. Somebody's got to come pick them up. Somebody's got to maintain them. To just get a printer or two there and some paper, how complicated is that? So, and time equals money. So again, I don't have specific dollars and cents, but you can look at this versus this. And another thing that was brought up, we train before every election. It doesn't matter what. So the training is not an additional cost. You would just change the training. And I want to speak to the people that say we have fair elections. I want to know, are they able to look at that QR code and tell what that QR code says so that they can say that it's a fair election? And also the memory cards that we pull out and send in, are they able to look at those memory cards and make sure that there's not some kind of virus or some kind of algorithm on them? So I think people that swear they are free and fair elections, I'll be nice. I won't say that.
Thank
But
you.
anyway,
Appreciate it.
thank y'all.
Yeah, you're on record, by the way. So, oh, yes.
Thank you. I know we're all trying to leave, but really quickly, since you've worked at a poll, tell me about the feasibility of having poll managers and poll workers count the votes, the actual, like, I voted for Abraham Lincoln, you voted for, I don't know who ran against him. But tell me about what you imagine that feasibility being like happening on that night.
Well, what I would say is that part of it too, in my poll, we have like 333 to 350 people vote, which I think is way too many. We have about 9 people there. We've got 5 or 6 of those big machines, and I think everything is underutilized. But I do have to say, we have to be there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and the polls close at 7. And then we're efficient. We have all our paperwork filled out ahead of time. So we're out of there by 8 or 8:30. I don't think the poll workers need to count the votes. I think you need to bring in a fresh group. And if you're going to count them at the poll, I don't think you need a poll that only has 300 and something votes, because if you're going to bring fresh people in, they need to count more votes than 300. So some of the people that have talked about, you know, condense, and I live in Sandy Springs, I can walk to the next poll. So it's not, you know, like in some of the rural areas, it might be a matter of distance and whatever, but most everybody does have a car. And that's probably how they got to the first poll to begin with. But I don't, like I said, I don't think it should be the poll workers. But we also just had an election on Saturday. I was at a convention, and we did the hand-marked paper ballots and counted, and it was awesome. Thank you.
Hold on. Did you have a question, Senator Estes?
Well, I had two things, not for the
Okay.
Not for me.
speaker.
All right. Thank you, Ginger. Appreciate it.
One, I just wanted to make sure that you made note that the 3 of us stayed.
Yes, sir. I did.
Thank you for that. And then the other thing I wanted to make sure to point out was that in 2019, there was a concern over Georgia taxpayers with hand-marked paper ballot systems costing us over $200 million. That's what Brad Raffensperger quoted as the reason for going with Dominion, because it would only cost our state $150 million. I would like to point out that at this point, if you count how much the state has spent, how much the state is supposed to spend, and how much counties have spent, we're probably nearing $500 million in costs. So not to rehash history, but just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Mr. Leader, do you have something, or?
Just wanted to make a comment. I would I'm sorry other members had to go. I know there's other committee meetings that conflicted, but I hope that everyone that was here today will provide some feedback to Chairman Burns today, if possible, tonight. Members in the audience, if you would like to offer suggestions to Chairman Burns, please do so. My preference would be to see this bill come back tomorrow for a possible vote. So if we can get all these suggestions codified and I'm looking over here at the attorney, he may have to work all night, but I'd love to see this get some movement tomorrow so we can take action.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Leader, on that. And yeah, we do have 2 meetings left. We've also got some caucuses to approve that we didn't get done while we had a quorum. So we've still got to get that done. So y'all don't let me forget at the next meeting. But we do have 2 meetings left. We're going to meet again at 5 o'clock tomorrow. And thank all of y'all for hanging in there and being here with us, and look forward to the discussion. Thank you. We're adjourned.